Hey everyone, Ethan here from WordTech, and I wanted to bring you a review of the new, or fairly new, G.Skill Ripjaws KM780R. Now, there is also a KM780. The R is just the version that does not come with the extra gaming-specific keys. You save a little bit of money and don't get those. That is why I went with this version. So if you're considering either version, this review will work for that, hence the reason for the title that you see down there. Anyway though, so this keyboard here, I recently picked it up for my new setup. I'd been looking for a new mechanical keyboard. I wanted something that was RGB. I previously had a Logitech G710 Plus. Great keyboard, but the keycaps kind of suffered and didn't have a lot of the features that I was looking for in a keyboard, especially being, RGB being one of those. So anyway, here's the new keyboard here. And I got the brown switch version. That's personally my favorite switch. You can also get it in reds and blues. I think those are the only three that they're offering currently, but at least it comes in all three. Exact same keyboard, just different switches, and they're the actual Cherry RGB switches. So these are not Kale switches. These are Cherry switches made in Germany, and they're the RGB version of it that Cherry partnered with Corsair to make, I believe. But they're still, the switches are technically owned by Cherry. So anyway, they're not a custom solution by G.Skill. They're the genuine switches, the genuine RGB switches, meaning they actually have that clear casing down in here, which you may be able to see. If you look, you've got the brown stem there. I don't know how well you can see it. I'll try and maybe get some B-roll of that here. But anyway, it's actually a clear housing the LED goes in, which really helps it shine. First, I want to talk about build quality, though, because that was the first thing that really struck me when unboxing this, is the overall feeling of quality with this keyboard in comparison to a lot of the other stuff out there. So first off, we have kind of two things going on with mechanical keyboards that I've seen so far right now. We have pretty good plastic build quality, and then we have Corsair doing the full aluminum plate build. Well, this is more like the Corsair, so it does actually have the aluminum plate down in here. Let me take off the wrist rest so you guys can see that. So it does have the full aluminum plate right here, fairly thick aluminum that the keys ride on, which has them kind of, stick out up at the keyboard, which both makes the LEDs look way cooler and overall makes the keys look way cooler in my opinion. Of course, some people prefer them to be more sunken down in, but this is what most people seem to prefer. So anyway, very similar to the Corsair keyboard in that sense, and that's pretty much where the differences kind of end, other than the switches themselves. Where the similarities end, other than the switches themselves, which Corsair is also using the Cherry switches, the Cherry RGB switches. So you've got that, and that is basically the main similarity to another keyboard I've seen. But other than that, it's very different overall. So now, continuing on with the keyboard, we'll go and look at the bottom. That's one of the first things I actually want to show you guys when it comes to the overall build quality, other than that aluminum plate. So the bottom here is plastic, which isn't really surprising, and it's a really fairly strong plastic. I can't flex this. I've been trying to flex the entire keyboard, actually. Haven't been able to twist the keyboard, haven't been able to push and flex this plate at all or anything like that. Wouldn't be surprised if there was actually possibly metal under that plate. It's pretty strong. But anyway, the bottom here looks fairly normal, but you may actually notice this metal frame around the side. And that is, yes, actually metal. It's not plastic, and it's really stiff. I don't know exactly what it's made out of. I would assume not aluminum, probably steel. Makes the keyboard actually fairly hefty. It's one of the heavier keyboards I've picked up. But that metal frame goes all the way around, and even goes in the front here. And that's helping reinforce the keyboard so that it doesn't twist as easy. It also allows the keyboard to put this little cable management clip here. And this clip here, it can slide back and forth, which is good for holding like your mouse cable or whatever, to keep it from getting out and getting in the way of everything else. But the only real complaint I guess I have here, this is one of my first complaints of the entire keyboard, is this clip here. Fairly small complaint, but it's actually really hard to get a cable in there. That's a very small opening for a fairly large hole. And so what happens here is this, which is designed to hold the cable up, I tried putting in just the mouse cable for my G700S that I have over here, and it wouldn't fit. And that's a slightly larger than average mouse cable, I would say. It's mainly for charging. It's a rubber, not a braided cable. Braided would probably fit in here easier. Most of the braided ones seem to be a little bit smaller diameter. But I was still kind of frustrated about that. It's like I can't use it. I tried pushing it in there, and I mean, maybe if I took a while and gave it a lot of effort, that would be doable. But I don't really find that to be fun to have to force my cable in there, and I feel like it's going to pinch it and break the cable. So just keep that in mind, that don't buy this keyboard specifically for this feature, because your mouse cable may not fit. So that's that. So I got the bottom of the keyboard. I already showed you the frame and everything. Pretty good sized rubber feet. They do grip really well. I haven't had a problem with the keyboard really sliding around. It does slide maybe a little easier than my Logitech G710 Plus, but it's not too bad. And then you've got the single step flip ups here to raise the keyboard about, I'd say a ½ inch off of at an angle. It's already actually at a pretty good angle, in case you didn't notice. So that's with them flattened, and it actually is already at a decent angle for the keys, although it does kind of scoop right here. But I'll go ahead and flip this up so you can see what it looks like when it's up. So not a huge difference. I prefer them up. Some people prefer them more flat, but I don't think that it needed bigger ones like some of the other keyboards have. I think this is just the right angle. So moving around to the back of the keyboard, we actually have some cool features on this one that some other keyboards do and some don't have. So first you have this switch, and I don't know how well you can see that, but the switch here says G and S on it. Now that's kind of weird nomenclature there. I'm not sure why they did it that way, but that actually allows you to select between N key rollover and select between 6 key rollover. Now there's not a huge reason for that. You probably just want to leave it on N key, which is the G. S is the 6 key, but you know, I think that's there just for some legacy support stuff and whatnot. That's the most unique feature I've seen on this keyboard, though. That's pretty rare that you see something like that. So we've got that. So you've got over here after the switch, you've got a headphone output and a microphone output or input. So that there actually is a direct line through the braided cable here that plugs into the computer, and that is really nice if you have a headphones with short cables, or you just like being more organized. It's nice to be able to plug your headphones into the back of here, never having to reach back to your computer. In my setup, it's not a big deal because I got the laptop right here. But if you guys had seen the videos of my old setup, that would have been really extremely helpful. So it's really nice to have that there. And then next over there, you've got a USB pass-through. It's a USB 2.0 pass-through. So it's not a 3.0 or anything like that. It is just a 2.0 pass-through. So that is basically it for the kind of I/O on the keyboard. But continuing on with the I/O, or in relation to the I/O, I want to talk about this cable here. This is probably by far the nicest cable I've ever seen on a keyboard, and I'm talking including Corsairs, Logitechs, Razer, everything. This is an extremely thick, fairly stiff braid, which I like a stiff cable. Makes it kind of easier to keep in place, to route without having to use a bunch of cable clips. So anyway, it's a really long cable. It's probably 6 or 7 feet. And at the end of the cable, which I actually have plugged in right now so you guys can see the lighting, otherwise I'd unplug it. But at the end of the cable, it actually has a breakout for all 4 of the cables on the keyboard. The USB for the keyboard, the USB pass-through, and then the headphone and microphone port. And they split off with about another foot of range. So pretty much any computer, you're going to be able to get those around to wherever they need. Maybe if you had a large laptop like I do over here, you may not be able to get it all the way around the other side of the laptop, but most of the time you're going to have 2 USBs on one side along with those audio ports on the laptop, so probably not a huge deal there, and it does depend on the size of the laptop as well. So anyway, that is it for the cabling. Now I want to show you guys something about the front here. So up here, and this actually is almost not a copy, but kind of the idea came from Logitech. I know a lot of them have media keys, but I really like this here. This is a volume dial, and as you can see, it is working and moving over on the computer over there. It's a roller, and a lot of them have just a button up and down, and that frustrates me because you have to tap it over and over. This you just roll really quick to whatever volume you want. So that is something I really like. This is actually a metal wheel, though. It's metal. It's got smooth on the middle, and then it's got these diamond plates or diamond shapes on the outside. So you can really feel where it is. It's just the right size for one finger. Really good. I actually give them really good credit for that. That screams quality to me as well. So Then you've got your media keys, which you've got stop, backwards, play, pause, forwards, and audio mute. So that's nice. But speaking of these here, there is actually on the front, right here, you've got this big grid here. And that grid is actually a volume readout. So you don't even have to look at your computer. You can see what your volume is at-ish. It's got, I think, 12 points on it. You can see where your volume's at, even when you're in game or whatever, without the volume thing popping up. And that's really nice, especially if you like a particular volume while you're playing, like most of us do. Or even if you just have a game like CSGO that loads up really loud. You can see this while it's loading and all of a sudden turn it down because you know what your volume's at all times. And that's a really good feature in my opinion. That's something I haven't seen on many of the other keyboards. So moving along the top here, you've got a G.Skill logo. And then over here, you've got a timer countdown. Now, that timer key is actually pretty unique. So it allows you to set timers that you can use the lighting on the keyboard for. And those timers can be used for all kinds of things in-game. And you just tap that, and that starts your timer. Anyway, though, you've got your brightness levels here, which can go all the way down to off. So it has 4 brightness levels, not including off. So 5 including off. But I always leave it on max brightness. And that brings me to pretty much my second complaint about this keyboard. The second con is I feel like the LEDs just aren't as bright as they could be. And I have seen other of the Cherry RGB switches, other keyboards with those Cherry RGB switches, and they just seem to be brighter. I don't know if it's these keycaps. I don't know if it's the way the switches are mounted. I don't know if they're not routing as much power to it. I'm not sure what that's about. They aren't using a separate USB for power for the LEDs, though. It is one USB that powers the keyboard and the lights, so maybe that has something to do with it. I know a lot of them are doing, I have seen there are keyboards out there that do the lighting on a separate USB to get enough power. It's bright enough, I'd say, but I wish it could go brighter because it's kind of cool to show off those effects, and when you want to show them off, you want to show them off really bright. But max brightness is just about right for a normal like gaming workload. It's not going to blind you, which is nice. So then we go over here, we've got your Windows lock key. And the nice thing about all these keys is when you press them, they actually turn red. So these are actually RGB as well. So all of these keys up here are RGB along with all the ones across the top over here. And the nice thing about that is you can change the color of them to match everything. As you can see, the rainbow is going across them right now. But when you press them, they turn red, even ignoring the rest of the coloring, just to show you what the status of that particular key is. And I really appreciate that G.Skill did that, because I was a little bit worried about being able to tell. I mean, is it just off and on or what? No, it's nice to just have a solid color that tells you exactly what's going on there. Then, continuing on, we've got Mode 1, Mode 2, and Mode 3. Full RGB, I've got Mode 3 set for the rainbow. I have Mode 2 set for gaming, and I got Mode 1 set for general typing. So that's that. You've got your macro recording key. That is very similar to what Logitech has done on a keyboard. And you've also got your 6 G keys over here, which is also, again, very similar to what Logitech has done. You can program them to do practically anything, and they change depending on the mode that you have the keyboard in. I don't particularly use these keys a lot, so I think 6 is plenty. There are other keyboards out there that have 12, 24, etc. But I feel like 6 is just the right amount because those few games that you may want them in for something in particular, a macro or whatever, they're nice to have, but I don't use them very much. Maybe if you do, maybe if you need a lot of programmable keys, maybe this isn't the keyboard for you, but it has 6 of them, and I think that's plenty for most people. So, now to move on to the wrist rest here. This right here is also by far the nicest wrist rest I've seen come on a keyboard, a mechanical keyboard. Corsair's is pretty great as well. I really don't like Logitech's, it's just a slab of plastic. But this one here is softer than the Corsair one. It's not squishier, but it's much softer touch. And it has a little bit of a style to it rather than just being a slab that's got a bunch of soft touch coating on it. It's got these angles here, and then it's got the border outline of plastic, and then it's also got the soft touch here. It's a very thick rubber, it feels like when you touch it, even though it's actually not that thick. And the pattern is very... I'm trying to say this, very extruded. So it feels kind of rough, but in a good way. So it feels really good to your wrists when you're using it. I'd say my only real frustration with it is that the angle it's at, I feel like, is not what it could be. So I'll show you what it looks like clipped on here. So there, I've got it back on, and as you can see, the keys, because they come out of the keyboard so far, because they're the plate-mounted ones, plate-mounted switches, the wrist rest is a little bit low. So when I'm typing on it, see if I can get a side view of what I mean here. When I put my hand up on it, for example, and say I'm typing, I feel like I have to raise my hand when I'm typing. I feel like I have to lift my hands up, and I'm not actually using the wrist rest while I am typing. And that's a little bit frustrating, especially for the lower keys here. They just feel so tall. But a lot of the keyboards are like that, even Corsairs. I think Logitech did have that down. They had a better angle. It was a thicker wrist rest. But it is a very, very comfortable wrist rest. Nice to use when you're only using one hand and you're maybe you're resting the other one, depending on the type of game you're playing. Overall, though, it's really good, and that's depends on the shape of your hands as well. So that's just particularly, I would prefer a thicker wrist rest. Some people probably like them to be thinner anyway. So there's that. And I think the last thing I really have to talk to you about on this is the typing experience. And then I'll try and go over some of the software, actually. But the typing experience. So it feels just like a brown switch. So if you've ever typed on a brown keyboard, that's exactly how this will feel. Brown switches, for those of you that maybe haven't typed on them, they have a fairly short actuation distance, and they have a tactile feedback. So as you push them down, and you may be able to see as I push one of these down here, as I push it down, there's a little bump where it slows down and you can feel the key kind of pushing back on your finger. That's when it's actually sent the signal to the computer. So here, see, you can see that I'm not pushing the key down all the way. It's right when that actuation point hits. So you can feel that. And then you can bottom them out, of course, too. And they're actually fairly loud when you bottom them out because they're plate mounted on aluminum. They don't have rubber dampeners or anything like that, which is pretty nice. And overall, I think, though, the typing experience is excellent. It feels somehow better than most of the browns that I've typed on myself. So it feels a little bit better than the G710 Plus. That had the rubber O-ring dampeners, which I didn't particularly like the feel of. I pulled off the dampeners. It felt a little bit better, but the keycaps on the G710 Plus are they're not very good keycaps. They feel like they flex too much when you're typing really hard. These ones don't feel like they're going to flex at all. I'm not sure if they're made out of ABS or if they're like PBT or something special like that, but they're really good keycaps overall. I really like them. They feel good. They have a slight rubber coating to them that's just perfect. They haven't worn off at all on me so far, but of course I've only used this keyboard for a few days now. But they're really good keycaps. The font's normal, no special weird fonts like what Razer has done. So overall, I think G.Skill nailed the font and the keycaps, as well as the typing experience. Just feels great on it. I have no complaints about that. Again, browns are my favorite switch. That's why I got the brown version. This does come in other switches, so buy whichever one you prefer. But pretty great typing experience there. So now the software. I'm not going to do any screen caps of the software this time, but it's good software overall, a little bit slow to respond, but you can do pretty much everything that you can do with the Logitech's gaming software. It's not quite as simplified as, say, Razer's software, and it's not quite as complicated as Corsair's software. It's an in-between, very similar to what Logitech has. So they have quite a few different patterns that you can do with the lighting, which is nice. They have checkpoint, they have the rain droplets, they have the wave, they have breathing, they have all that kind of stuff. They have a bunch of different ones. But they allow quite a bit of customizability on those particular wave and other lighting effect formats, rather than Razer where you can just select them. This one allows you to not only select which colors in particular go along with that, but select how much of that color is on that particular wave or other lighting effects. So for example, on the wave here, as you can see, I've got all the different colors going right now. If I wanted, though, I could take the green section, say here, for example, and shrink it down to a lot smaller so it's just on one key and, say, make blue, half the keyboard if I wanted. And it gives you the ability to do that. It's not quite as robust as Corsair's software, but I think theirs has maybe gone a little bit too far with the RGB stuff. So I'm really happy with the level of customizability that you have with the lighting on this software for this keyboard. And I think overall they did a great job in that department. So you've got that, and then you can also program all of your keys. Every key is programmable, so it's not just the macro keys that are programmable. You can program them to do basically anything. I actually did not check if it supports scripting or not, like Logitech does, but it supports all kinds of stuff, and I overall think that it's the perfect balance of simplicity and customizability on the software front there, and it does look good. Again, my only real complaint about the software, a little bit clunky. Everything's in the right spot, but it just doesn't feel as smooth as it could. Sometimes you click on something, there's a delay, and honestly, I was doing some installation stuff on my computer over here on my laptop, which is 44 gigs of RAM and a 6700 HQ. So it should have no problem, installing, say, video editing application and doing other stuff. But the software for the G.Skill keyboard started to lag out, and nothing else did. Everything else was running smooth still. So not sure what's up with that, but it's overall not too bad. It's not enough to really get in the way of anything. It's just something to be prepared for. I wouldn't stray away from this just because of that, though. It's not terrible. So, and feature-wise, it's great. So, in conclusion, I think G.Skill has something very special here, to be honest with you. I think that they did an incredibly good job with this keyboard. It is by far my favorite mechanical keyboard that I've ever used before, including things from DEC keyboards, DOS keyboard, Corsair, Razer, Logitech, all the big guys out there, Roswell. This is by far the one that I've been the happiest with, and I mean the typing experience is just like any other brown typing experience, and I've always been happy with the mechanical typing experience from Cherry switches, and they are genuine Cherry switches again, which I appreciate. But I think when it comes to the combination of build quality that they have here, overall design, no quirky things either when it comes to the keycaps, and overall they pretty much nailed the hardware of this keyboard 99%. Again, my only major complaint about it is I wish it was a little bit brighter, and not really major, these are more minor, but they're my only complaints. I wish it was a little brighter, and I do wish that this key, or this cable holder that it has on the back was a little bit thicker. I may try and figure out a way to carve that down a little bit or something, mod that a little bit to make it fit my particular mouse's wire, but it is pretty tiny, which surprised me. Anyway, those are my only complaints about hardware. Great job, G.Skill. You guys did a great job with this. It's sturdy. I think this is going to last me as long as I want it to last me, and much further than that if I so desire. So there's that, and the software is overall great. It doesn't feel like a new crappy piece of software. It's fairly well polished, a little bit slow at times, but other than that, it has all the right features that I feel a mechanical keyboard with RGB features needs. So, good job on that front. If you guys could release an update to maybe make it a little bit quicker, that'd be awesome, but I don't think it's really necessary. So, there's the G.Skill KM780R keyboard review. Again, the only difference between the R and the KM780 without the R is the specialized keycaps for gaming that you can swap on there. I would honestly just recommend getting the R, though. It's a little bit cheaper and great the way it is. And overall, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed with what they did here. Great job, G.Skill. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video and leave your comments and let me know how I'm doing, as well as let me know how you like the product, what you think about the G.Skill keyboard, especially if you own one yourself and if you're going to go buy one. So let me know. Thank you.